wanted to make it into a startup to actually see the benefit of what we've developed come to life. We want to definitely start expanding for developing countries and make it a viable and more feasible solution. We bioengineer bacteria to filter salt from seawater to create fresh water. I think what we can make and bring to the world is very promising.
Welcome back to another episode of the Startup Passport by Econsulate. Today I'm joined by Neha Silva. You are the CEO and co-founder of Aestuarium. Thank you very much for joining today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
When we go to your LinkedIn profile, there is one thing that you mentioned, which is my ultimate goal is to revolutionize the field of drug therapy so the healthcare industry can benefit, alongside making my contribution to the world's sustainable development goals. Now you're co-founder of a company, so how has that been working out?
Yeah, so it's actually, Aestuarium is quite different from drug therapy, because what we do is we bioengineer bacteria to filter salt from seawater to create fresh water. But basically, the core idea of this is to help people. That's where I come from. That's where my, how do you say it? My motivation lies. And that's also why when Aestuarium started out as a competition in the university, I knew immediately that I wanted to join, I wanted to help. And what people also don't realize with science is it's very translational. So even though I'm doing my master's also in pharmaceutics, for example, I can translate a lot of things that I learned there to Aestuarium, and it has helped a lot. So I think it works very well in terms of doing Aestuarium, and eventually maybe we also want Aestuarium to do a little bit of the pharma field, but that's in the future. So
But then you just mentioned essentially the company started through a university challenge.
yes.
How exactly did that take place?
Yeah, so during our bachelor's, there's a competition called iGEM. It's basically a synthetic biology competition where you use synthetic biology to solve a world problem. And a professor at Maastricht University, he basically put together a team, and it was up to us to come up with an idea to solve a problem. And my co-founder and CEO of Aestuarium, Anirudh, he had experience with water scarcity because he's from India, and he really wanted to tackle this issue, which is how the whole thing came to be. And we had very nice, promising results from the competition. And we wanted to make it into a startup to actually see the benefit of what we've developed come to life.
And you already mentioned your co-founder. How does the team look like right now?
Yeah. So we're a team of 6 people. But yeah, my co-founder Anirudh, and I also have another co-founder, Matisse. We own majority of the shares, and we have 3 other co-founders as well. They mainly, we're all technical based. And that's because when we started out in the competition, it was also very biotech based competition, and we branched out from the competition into the startup world. So we had to learn a lot of business side on our own, but we brought in one business/finance person called Sinan. So he's one of the other 3 people, and the other 2 people, they focus more on safety because we work with GMOs. So that's very important, as well as developing the product. But what I want to kind of mention here is we have a very strong board of advisors that help with the business side of things. So even though we're quite technically focused, we have that aspect. But the reason we want to be technically focused is because we are a biotech company at the end of the day, and we want to have many biotech solutions. So not just with the water scarcity, like I said, maybe pharma as well. But yeah, that's why we have a big biotech-based team.
Can you talk a little bit more about how your process works? So you're basically making water more accessible in a way.
Yeah. So basically, we bioengineer this bacteria, and what they do, we then encapsulate them in something like a Haribo. It's an alginate bead, but it is made of that kind of material. And we then place them in seawater. So the idea is they take up most of sodium chloride from seawater, and we can then also release it because it's based on a light trigger, basically. So in green light, you can take it up, and in red light, you release the salt. So hopefully we're planning on also purifying the salt and making it an additional revenue stream, but this is something we're still looking at. But the idea is that current technologies, typically the most used one is reverse osmosis, and it's a membrane technology. So you basically use a lot of pressure and you push seawater through these tiny little pores. And the reason it uses a lot of energy is because seawater has a lot of salt. So if we can take up most of the salt and reduce the salt, they can then pass it on with like very little energy. So we can make that technology very efficient and viable for people. But again, we can also use our own technology as a standalone, but that would take a little bit longer because GMOs. Yeah.
And where do you see the biggest use case for this? Obviously, in terms of water and like needing access to clean water, to safe water,
Yeah.
it's a lot where people initially start thinking about developing countries.
Yeah.
But then sometimes there has also been like a water scarcity in the southern parts of Europe,
Yeah.
where things have been happening. Do you have a vision with that, especially like looking at the long term?
Yeah. So actually, we want to start out somewhere in the Middle East because that is where there is the biggest market for desalination and the biggest issue as well because it's quite a dry area. But once we have kind of set up our base in this area, we want to definitely start expanding for developing countries. And make it a viable and more feasible solution. But we definitely want to start out in a more developed country per se, because then we can show that it is something that is feasible and that can actually be used before we reach out to countries that actually need it.
And to end off on a more personal note,
Yeah.
obviously you have been very involved with the company, but also with the technology initially, and now you're also finding yourself to be a CEO of the company.
Yeah.
What has been your biggest learning being a CEO purely from like the business side of things?
Yeah, I think it would be my biggest learning would have been that I was quite an introvert before I started this, and yeah, my co-founders would probably say like laugh at this, but they have tried so hard to get me to go on like podcasts and like doing pitches, etc. And I've always been like, no, I can take care of all the behind the scenes actions and everything, but I cannot like do the like in-person stuff because it was very nerve-wracking to me. But I think I've grown quite a bit in that sense. And I think that is the biggest learning I've had is to kind of get out of my comfort zone and also in a field that's new, like business, for example, and talk to people about a solution. And I'm happy to do so because I think what we can make and bring to the world is very promising. So yeah, happy to do it.
And that has certainly been working out for this podcast we have been on. So thank you much for joining, for all of the insights, and good luck with everything ahead for the company.
Thank you for having me again.